The younger soldiers laughed at the old man's tattoos. To them, the rows of crude tally marks up and down his arm were just a relic of a forgotten war or the ramblings of a broken mind. But those lines weren't decoration. Each one was a decision, a conscience, a cost. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? No one really knew when Sergeant Eli Mercer had started working in Bay 6. The barracks log had no formal entry. The staff just said, "He's been around forever. He rarely spoke. He never saluted anyone. And he didn't wear a uniform with rank. Just a faded field jacket with no name tag, a leather belt worn smooth, and those gloves, always those black leather gloves. Recruits who were assigned to Base 6 were warned, don't bother him. He doesn't care about your rank, and he won't help you cheat." Eli was old, maybe late 60s. His back was stiff and his knees cracked when he crouched, but he could strip and reassemble a rifle faster than anyone else on base. No stopwatch. Needed. Just instinct. Still, he kept to himself. A shadow in the maintenance hall. Until one day, a fresh batch of trainees came through. One of them, Private Derek Mason, noticed the marks on Eli's forearm when he rolled up his sleeve to wipe engine grease. "Yo, Sarge," Derek said loudly. "What's with the tally marks? That how many push-ups you did in Nam?" The others laughed. Eli didn't respond. He just kept wiping the spark plug in slow, deliberate circles. Private Santos chimed in. "Maybe it's his kill count, old school Call of Duty badge." Laughter again. Then someone tried to count them. At least 38 distinct tally lines, drawn with precision, spaced evenly. Most were faded. A few looked newer. One line, thicker than the rest, ran straight across the others like a scar. No one dared ask about that one. Later that afternoon, Derek snuck a photo and posted it on his private story. Caption: "Crazy old man keeps track of ghosts." The next day, a colonel showed up in Base 6. He didn't say why, just looked Eli in the eye, nodded once, and left. The recruits fell silent for a while after that, but curiosity always finds its way back. Because that night, Derek found something. While sneaking a beer in the archive room, he stumbled on a decommissioned mission file from 1986. It was stamped, "Confidential, not to be opened." But it wasn't locked. Inside, a grainy photo of a much younger Eli Mercer. Same eyes, same gloves, and a mission header. Operation Quiet Dust, the final line of the report. Confirmed KIA, 37 hostiles, 0 casualties. Agent E.M. Derek. Stared at the paper. 37 kills. Then he thought of the arm. 38 tallies. But why the extra one? And what did the bold line across them all mean? The answer wouldn't come from the file. It would come from the next morning, when Eli would finally speak, and the entire unit would realize what those marks really meant. The morning after Derek found the file, the atmosphere in Bay 6 was different. Quieter. Heavier. Private Mason hadn't told anyone what he'd seen. Yet. But he kept glancing at Eli's arm. At that line, the thick one slashing across the others. Like a cut through history, Eli noticed. He always noticed. But instead of walking away like usual, he set his tools down and turned. For the first time, he looked Mason in the eye. Not with anger, not even with judgment. Just stillness. "You got something to ask, Private?" he said, voice like gravel soaked in cold coffee. Mason stammered. "Sir, I mean, no disrespect. I asked if you had a question, not if you meant disrespect." The room froze. Santos looked up from the carburetor he was working on. The other recruits stopped pretending to be busy. Eli removed his gloves, slow, precise, like everything he did. He held up his arm, lined, worn, every mark a ghost, and pointed at the thick scar that cut through the tally marks. "This one?" he said. "You want to know about this one?" No one answered. But the silence was enough. Eli leaned against the workbench. "First 37, he began. "That's the easy part. Those are confirmed. They had rifles, orders, uniforms. He Paused. 38th was a kid. Mason swallowed. He ran into the crossfire after we'd cleared the village, Eli continued. Didn't have a weapon, didn't raise his hands, just ran toward his father's body. He looked down at his palm, not as if he were holding something, but as if something was still stuck there. I fired out of instinct. I wasn't supposed to. No one blamed me. Command cleared it, said it was justified. The room was silent. I didn't put that mark for him, Eli said. He touched the scar again. I put it for me. Santos, suddenly pale, whispered. The bold one? Eli nodded. That's not a count. It's a reminder that sometimes not all ghosts wear boots. He slipped the gloves back on. No lecture, no warning, just truth. From that day on, no one made jokes about the tally marks. Not even Derek, whose story had been shared more times than he realized, until it was suddenly removed, because someone higher up had seen it, and they didn't want people asking questions about Operation Quiet Dust. But it wasn't over. Later that week, a black SUV pulled into the base, and the man who stepped out wasn't military. No uniform, no salute, just a briefcase, and eyes that scanned Bay 6 like he already knew where the ghosts lived. Bay 6 was never quiet in the afternoons. The clang of wrenches, hum of compressors, and occasional swearing from young recruits made up the usual soundtrack. But when the black SUV pulled up, the noise died like someone had cut the power. The man who stepped out didn't wear a suit, yet somehow looked more official than any officer. Civilian clothes, slate gray jacket, sharp shoes, mirrored sunglasses. Mid-50s, clean-shaven, purposeful stride. He carried a single briefcase, and he didn't ask for directions. He walked straight through the open hangar door, past the rows of cadets who instinctively stiffened, and stopped directly in front of Eli. Mercer, you still keep the keys under the coffee can, Eli? The man said calmly. Eli didn't flinch. Depends who's asking, he replied. The man removed his glasses, cold gray eyes, calculating, familiar. Matthew Klein, he said.
CIA liaison to Joint Reconnaissance Group 3A. We served together, once.
A silence stretched between them, decades of unspoken things condensed into 3 seconds. Then Eli sighed. Didn't think they'd send you, I volunteered, Klein said, placing the briefcase on the workbench. This isn't a courtesy. Call. The cadets, now pretending to work, strained to hear. Klein's voice dropped. Someone leaked the Quiet Dust archive. Eli's jaw tensed. Not me. Wasn't accusing, but it went public for 17 minutes before being pulled. That's 17 minutes too long. Eli didn't respond. Just unlatched the briefcase. Inside, a sealed folder marked Active, Level V Clearance. Only a thumb drive and a worn dog tag. It wasn't his. Klein tapped the folder. They're reopening the op. Not officially, but the agency believes someone is connecting dots. Someone with access to DC archives and motive to discredit the entire mission. Eli looked at the dog tag. Bellamy? Klein nodded. Or someone using his name. His daughter. Just started working at the Pentagon. Analyst division. She's been pulling old field logs. Eli frowned. She was 6 when he died. 6, Klein echoed. And smart enough to find the one file we never thought anyone would read. Silence. Again. Finally, Eli said, You want me to talk to her? No, I want you to stop her, Klein said flatly, before she starts asking the wrong people the right questions. That night, Eli didn't sleep. He sat alone in the barracks yard, gloves off, rolling the dog tag between his fingers. On his forearm, the tally mark seemed darker under the moonlight. The scar line pulsed like it remembered, because Bellamy hadn't just died on that mission. He had died believing Eli had fired second, when in truth, Eli had pulled the trigger first. The next morning, the sun hadn't fully broken over the base when a beige government sedan rolled past the main gate. She wasn't what Eli expected. Late 20s, sharp eyes, auburn hair tied in a tight bun, civilian clothes, but military posture. She moved like someone who'd studied her surroundings before stepping into them. Her name was Eva Bellamy, and she was holding the quiet dust file, the one from the archive room. She didn't go to the admin office, didn't ask for directions. She walked directly to Bay 6, like it had been programmed into her since childhood. Eli was sweeping the concrete floor with slow, deliberate strokes when she entered. "Sergeant Mercer?" she asked. He didn't look up. Retired the rank. "I'm Eva Bellamy," she said, extending a hand. "Daughter of Captain Aaron Bellamy." Eli froze mid-sweep. Not for long, but long enough for her to notice. "I know who you are," he said quietly. She pulled the file from her shoulder bag and placed it on the bench. "I found this 3 weeks ago. It wasn't locked, just mislabeled." Eli leaned, the broom against the wall. "Then you've read more than most." "I don't care about headlines or medals," she said. "I just want to know who my father really was." Eli looked at her. Really looked. She had his eyes. Same storm gray. Intensity. The kind that searched, not stared. "He was brave," Eli said. "Smart, and loyal to a fault." Eva raised an eyebrow. "So why does the report list your actions under classified variable? And why is his body listed as recovered, but his cause of death redacted?" Eli exhaled. "Because you don't write the truth when the truth ends careers. Because your father charged into a ghost village that wasn't supposed to exist, based on intel we weren't supposed to have, on orders that were never officially given, because I shot before I knew he was there." But he said none of that. Instead, he reached into his pocket and removed the dog tag Klein had left. He placed it on the workbench, next to the file. Eva stared at it like it might burn her. "I kept it," Eli said. "Not out of guilt, out of memory." "That sounds like the same thing." Eli nodded. "It often is." She picked up the tag, flipped it over. Engraved on the back were coordinates. Not standard issue. Personal etching. "I've seen these before," she whispered. "Your father planned to return," Eli said. "Not to the battlefield, to the truth." Eva looked up. "You were going to meet him there." Eli didn't confirm it, didn't have to. "Why didn't you go?" she asked. He tapped the thick scar on his forearm. "Because I'd already crossed the line." That night, Eva didn't leave the base. She sat outside Bay 6 under the same sky her father once marched beneath. And Eli? He sat inside, carving, a new tally. But this one didn't stand for blood. It stood for what came next. Because the coordinates on the tag weren't just a memorial, they were a map. The desert had a way of keeping secrets. Even with GPS, even with maps, even with perfect weather, nothing felt certain once the road disappeared behind you. They drove 6 hours in silence, Eli at the wheel of an old military jeep that somehow still ran. Eva riding shotgun, holding her father's dog tag like a compass. No music, no small talk, just the sound of wind over the hood and tires chewing gravel. When they arrived, it wasn't what Eva imagined. No marker, no monument. Just a flat, forgotten patch of desert surrounded by rusted wire and silence. Eli stepped out first. He walked exactly 38 paces from the road to a rocky outcrop, then knelt and brushed aside loose sand with the edge of his hand. Buried there, beneath. A dented tin box and layers of time was a single metal case. No lock, no emblem. Just scratches and dust. He opened it. Inside were 3 items. A torn page from a mission logbook, a worn cassette tape, and a sealed letter addressed to whom I never got to explain. Eva crouched beside him, stunned. "This is his handwriting," she whispered, running a finger across the label on the tape. Eli nodded. "He recorded it 2 nights before the op. Gave it to me in case he didn't make it." "Why didn't you give it to command?" she asked. "Because command was the reason." "He didn't make it." Eva stared at the tape. "Do you have a way to play it?" Eli reached into the jeep and pulled out an old field recorder. Still worked, still had batteries. He pressed play. Her father's voice crackled through the static. Tired, low, unfiltered. If you're hearing this, I broke the chain of command. Today, because the mission doesn't smell right. Intel came too clean, targets too defined. It feels like a trap, or worse, a cover. I told Eli, I trust him. He'll do what's right, even if I don't come back. Eva's eyes welled. If you're reading my logbook, you already know what happened. But if you're hearing this, tell my daughter I'm sorry I never brought her here. I wanted her to see the place where I stopped being afraid to tell the truth. The tape. Clicked off. Eva was frozen. Eli reached into the case and handed her the letter. She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she looked out over the empty desert. This place. It's like time forgot it, she said. Eli nodded. Some places aren't on the map for a reason. They buried the case again. But this time, Eva added something. Her father's tag. Not as a goodbye, as a marker. For the truth. That night back. At the base, Eva opened the letter, and inside, beyond the words of a father to a daughter, was one more thing. A single line. Hand-drawn, a tally mark, added by Aaron Bellamy. One life. One truth. One cost. The same way Eli had marked his own. The base was different when they returned. Subtly at first, salutes that came a beat late. Officers whose eyes lingered too long. Cadets whispering in corners, suddenly silent when Eli passed by. Eva felt it too. When she entered the admin building, to return her visitor badge, she noticed the file on the desk. Her name printed in red. Access under review. Surveillance flagged. Inside Base 6, Eli tried to return to routine, greasing tools, clearing supply inventory, resetting rifle racks. But the silence around him wasn't the usual kind. This one was sharp, intentional. And then, at 16:30 hours, it broke. Captain Wallace entered with 2 MPs behind him. Sergeant Mercer, he said, you're requested in command review. Eli stood slowly. Didn't know I was still under command. You are now. In the review room, a panel waited. 5 men in uniform, 1 in civilian clothes. Klein, Eva was there too, against protocol. She hadn't been invited, but she stood at the back, arms crossed, tape recorder in her bag, thumb on the play button. Wallace began. You accessed restricted archives, escorted a civilian to a decommissioned site, and concealed evidence related to an unsanctioned mission. Eli didn't deny it. Instead, he placed the mission logbook page on the table, followed by a copy of the tape's transcript. I didn't conceal anything, he said. I protected it until someone asked the right question. Klein leaned forward. You realize what happens if this goes public? Eli nodded. The truth gets messy, but silence doesn't clean it up. It buries it deeper. One of the panelists asked, why now, after all these years? Eli looked at Eva. Because her father didn't get to finish what he started. The room fell still. Then Klein spoke again. What you're suggesting, declassifying Operation Quiet Dust, revealing internal corruption, admitting civilian collateral, would destroy decades of narrative. Eli stepped forward. You already destroyed the narrative. I'm just digging up the pieces. Silence again. Then quietly, Eva reached into her bag. Pressed play. Her father's voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, tell my daughter, I'm sorry I never brought her here. I wanted her to see the place where I stopped being afraid to tell the truth. No one interrupted. When the tape ended, no one moved. Then Klein gathered the papers. You've made your point, Mercer, he said. This isn't over. But Eli knew it was the beginning. Outside, Eva caught up to him near the courtyard. You didn't have to do that, she said. He gave a tired smile. Yeah, I did. She reached into her pocket, handed him a folded piece of paper. What's this? An invite, she said, to speak at the Ethics Symposium next month at West Point. Eli blinked. Why me? Because stories like yours don't just get buried, she said. They either rot or they grow roots. West Point's lecture hall was larger than Eli expected, not in size, but in presence. Rows of uniforms sat in near-perfect formation, cadets from every walk of life, their eyes sharp, hands folded, waiting. Eli stood at the podium wearing his usual jacket, his gloves off, his forearms exposed, every line visible. Some cadets shifted when they saw them. Others leaned in. A few whispered, but no one laughed. He adjusted the microphone. "My name is Eli Mercer. Most of you don't know me." "That's by design." He paused. The silence stretched, not awkward, but heavy. "I was a soldier once. A good one. Some say the kind that doesn't need to ask questions. But I did. I asked the wrong ones, at the wrong time, to the wrong people." He gestured to his arm. "These marks? They're not tattoos. They're tallies. Each one a person." A few cadets stiffened. "I don't glorify them. I remember them. Because they didn't just disappear when I pulled the trigger. They lived inside me, still do." He walked away from the podium, closer to the edge of the stage. "There's one mark, right here." He tapped the thick line. "That's for me. For the one time I fired without being ordered, without being sure." Silence. "I was cleared of wrongdoing. But I never cleared myself." He scanned the room. War isn't just fought with weapons. It's fought with choices. Some loud, some silent, some you live with, some you carry. A hand went up. "Sir," a cadet asked, "if you could go back, would you undo the shot?" Eli looked at him. "No." Because the shot wasn't the mistake. He walked back to the podium. The mistake was staying silent for 17 years. While others kept wearing medals they didn't earn. While a daughter grew up without answers. While the truth stayed buried under the desert. He paused. "I'm not here to inspire you. I'm here to warn you. The moment you choose silence over what's right, you've already lost more than a war can take." The room stayed quiet, long after he finished. No applause, just breath. And then, slowly, a single cadet stood, followed by another, and another. No cheers. Just stillness, like a generation rising not to celebrate, but to listen. That night, back at the base, Eli sat alone in Base 6. Eva joined him, holding a small gift box. Inside, a leather-bound notebook. On the first page, in her handwriting, place to track the things worth remembering, not the ones you wish you could forget. Eli smiled, and for the first time, he didn't reach for his gloves. Because the tally marks were no longer just scars. They were his story. 3 weeks had passed since West Point. Base 6 was quiet again. Routine had returned. Recruits came and went. Tools were cleaned. Floors swept. Eli still wore the same old field jacket. Still didn't ask for thanks. But something had changed. Not outside, inside. The cadets no longer passed him like a ghost. Now they offered nods, sometimes questions, sometimes silence, but this time, respectful. Eva had returned to D.C., but she called once a week, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to ask how he was sleeping. He never lied. Then one morning, a letter arrived. Official seal. Heavy envelope. Hand-signed. Eli opened it slowly with the caution of a man used to bad news. But it wasn't that. It was a notification. This letter serves as formal acknowledgement that your contributions to Operation Quiet Dust are no longer classified. Your actions are now recognized under the Joint Valor Reassessment Initiative. He stared at it for a long time, not because of the recognition, but because of the final line. Your name has been added to the honor wall in Arlington. Section 7, Row 4, Plaque 217. For a man who had spent most of his life in shadows, it didn't feel like a reward. It felt complicated. But later that week, Eli went. Not in a dress uniform, not with a crowd, just in silence. The honor wall. Stretched for yards, names engraved in brass, polished every week. He walked slowly until he found it. Mercer, Eli J. Recon Operator. Operation Quiet Dust for duty, performed beyond command, with integrity that endured silence. He stood there a long time. Not because he needed to, because someone else had once stood in a place like this, wondering if the truth would ever surface. A man named Bellamy, and a daughter named Ava. He pulled something from his pocket, a small silver badge. Nothing official, just a private token. He placed it beneath the plaque, then turned. A young boy stood nearby, watching. Civilian clothes, maybe 10 years old, holding a notepad and a pencil. "Sir," the boy asked softly, "were you in the war?" Eli nodded once. "Yes?" "Did you win?" Eli paused, then said quietly, "Some battles. You don't win. You just survived them long enough to tell the truth." The boy smiled and ran off to his parents. Eli turned back one last time, and for the first time, the tally marks on his arm didn't feel like weight. They felt like witness, like a story told, not hidden. He walked away slowly, no longer haunted, just human, because the war was over, but the truth had finally come home. Thank you for watching. Your time and support mean everything. Until next time. Alternatif olarak biraz daha duygusal. Birtan Istersen. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Stories like this matter because you care.